Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. A Pakistan International Airlines passenger plane has crashed near the Jinnah International Airport in Karachi just before landing. The airline spokesperson says 91 passengers, 2 pilots and 5 crew members were on board. He said the Airbus A320 aircraft was on its way to Karachi from Lahore. Reacting on the crash on Twitter, Prime Minister Imran Khan said an inquiry will be launched into the incident immediately. He expressed grief over the tragedy and said he was praying for the crash's victims. Sindh Governor Imran Ismail said the plane fell in a residential area. Several houses have also been damaged in the area where the plane crashed. The Pakistan Army Quick Reaction Force and Rangers Sindh troops arrived at the crash site shortly to assist in relief and rescue efforts. The Minister of Health and Population Welfare has declared an emergency in all of Karachi's major hospitals due to the plane crash. Pakistan has reported its worst day in the fight against coronavirus, with the highest single-day deaths and infections so far. The Health Ministry says 50 more people have died, while 2,603 tested positive over the last 24 hours. The death toll has risen to 1,067, with the total number of infections 50,694. The ministry said 15,201 patients have recovered. It said 336 new infections were recorded in Sindh province, 310 in Punjab, 365 in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Meanwhile, Balochistan reported 39 more cases and the capital Islamabad 12 more. Meanwhile, in the US, over 1,200 more people have died from COVID-19, increasing the tally to over 94,000. Meanwhile, Brazil reported a record 1,188 deaths in 24 hours, pushing the toll to over 20,000. Worldwide, the death count has exceeded 333,000, with over 5.1 million people infected. More in this report.
Many countries are lifting restrictions as new deaths and the spread of the virus continue to slow. U.S. President Donald Trump says the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will issue guidance for reopening very soon.
I think CDC is going to put something out very soon. I spoke to them today. I think they're going to put something out very soon. We got to open our churches. People want to go in. I saw a scene today where people are trying to break into a church, to go into the church, not to break in and steal something, to break in. They want to be in their church. I said, you better put it out, and they're doing it, and they're going to be issuing something today or tomorrow.
Over in Australia, New South Wales will ease restrictions allowing cafes, restaurants and pubs to have up to 50 seated patrons. Australia is now asking the UK to exempt its travellers from the 14-day quarantine. Meanwhile, in Scotland, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has outlined a 4-phase incremental plan to ease lockdown restrictions from May 28th.
The lockdown restrictions have been absolutely necessary to mitigate the massive harm caused by the COVID-19 virus. However, the lockdown is creating harms of its own: loneliness and social isolation, deepening inequalities and serious damage to our economy. None of us want it to last any longer than it has to. So today we are setting out the phases in which we will aim to ease the lockdown.
Chechny's leader, Ramzan Kadyrov, has been taken to a hospital in Moscow after he started showing symptoms of the coronavirus.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says Israel is a cancerous tumor in the Middle East that should be confronted until Palestinians are liberated. In a speech on Jerusalem Day, Khamenei called on Palestinians to continue their uprising against Israel. The Supreme Leader said the long-lasting virus Zionists will be eliminated soon. He said a referendum must be conducted in the region as the Palestinians are in the majority. Khamenei and other senior Iranian officials have called repeatedly for an end to the State of Israel. Jerusalem Day is an annual event held on the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan. It was declared by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini in 1979. Palestine has rejected an aid shipment from the United Arab Emirates after it arrived at Israel's Ben Gurion airport. In a news conference, Health Minister Michaela said Palestine refused to receive the medical aid as the Emirati side did not coordinate with them. She said Palestine is a sovereign country and UAE should have spoken to the authorities first. The Emirati flight at Israel's airport marks the first public flight between the two states, despite the UAE not having any official ties with Israel. Meanwhile, Jordan has warned it will review the relationship with Israel over its plans to annex the occupied West Bank. Prime Minister Omar al-Razaz accused Tel Aviv of taking advantage of the coronavirus pandemic to implement its unilateral moves. The US says it will withdraw from the Open Skies Treaty, which permits unarmed aerial surveillance flights over member countries. Talking to media in Washington, President Donald Trump accused Russia of repeated violations of the accord. Russia's foreign ministry responded it had not violated the treaty and US withdrawal will be very regrettable. It said the Trump administration is trying to derail all agreements on arms control. Meanwhile, Trump said the US will formally withdraw from the accord in 6 months. The US president later said there is hope for talks in the future.
I think we have a very good relationship with Russia, but Russia didn't adhere to the treaty. So until they adhere, we will pull out. But there's a very good chance we'll make a new agreement or do something to put that agreement back together.
The US has accused China of breaking commitments to keep Hong Kong semi-autonomous. Washington's allegations came after Beijing term plans during and after COVID-19. The new planning group will explore and reconsider how the military is positioned around the world. It will also observe possible vulnerabilities where adversaries could try to take advantage of the US focus on COVID-19. In a statement, Special Assistant Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Air Force, Colonel D.D. Halfhill said the planning is to ensure the US military protects their homeland and supports all allies around the globe. The U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation says the shooting at the Texas Naval Air Station is being investigated as a terrorism act. Earlier, U.S. Navy shot down an active assailant at its Corpus Christi station, which wounded a security force member. FBI Special Agent Lee Greaves said investigators are working to determine whether a second person of interest is at large in the community. She said officials are still working to process the crime scene. In a separate statement, the U.S. Department of Justice said it is working with the FBI and will analyze electronic media found at the scene. The Justice Department did not elaborate on the nature of that electronic media. Guatemala's President Alejandro Giammattei has criticized the U.S. for deporting migrants infected with novel coronavirus. In an online talk, Giammattei said the United States has treated Guatemala in an unkind way. President Giammattei said Washington has not even sent a single mask during the pandemic. He said the government does not understand why the U.S. will send flights full of infection. 190 deportees have tested positive for the virus so far, amounting to 5% of the country's cases. In a statement, the U.S. Embassy listed the economic aid it has designated recently for Guatemala. It said Washington is committed to the health and prosperity of the Guatemalan people. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Hungary has announced it's shutting down transit zones on its southern border. This came just a week after the European Court of Justice ruled Hungary's practice of holding asylum seekers at transit camps is equivalent to unlawful detention. Prime Minister Viktor Orban's chief of staff said around 280 asylum seekers held in border camps will now be moved to reception centers. He said the Hungarian government disagrees with the ruling, but as an EU member state, it would adhere to all court rulings. He said the move poses a risk to European security. Gaila said in the future, asylum requests can only be submitted at Hungarian embassies and consulates. Orban's increasingly strict anti-immigration policies and Hungary's treatment of asylum seekers have been regularly criticized by European leaders. In Burundi, the head of the Election Commission has appealed for patience as ballots were collected and tallied following a tense poll. Earlier, Burundi voted to elect its president, legislators and local officials in an election marked by allegations of fraud and threat of COVID-19. Chairman of National Electoral Commission said the process of counting votes will take several days. He said the results of presidential, parliamentary and local will be announced at the same time on Monday or Tuesday. The last election, conducted in 2015, descended into violence that left 1,200 people dead. President Pierre Nkurunziza, whose government has repeatedly been accused of rights abuses, will step down after 15 years. The UN says the remains of a fugitive, a major suspect from the 1994 Rwandan genocide, have been identified in a grave in Congo. In a statement, a UN prosecutor said Augustin Bizimana, who was indicted on 13 charges in 1998, is believed to have died in 2000. The statement read Bizimana's remains were identified by DNA testing. The announcement follows the arrest of another suspect, Felicien Kabuga, in Paris last week. Kabuga was indicted in 1997 on 7 criminal counts, including genocide. Iran says 10,000 of its health workers have been infected with the deadly coronavirus so far. Deputy Health Minister Qasim Janbabai expressed alarm over the high infection rate among medical personnel. Janbabai said some of the infected health workers have already died of COVID-19. Earlier, Iranian media had reported a lack of personal protective equipment kits for workers on the front line against the pandemic. The UN says the novel coronavirus is spreading throughout Yemen, where it says the healthcare system has in effect collapsed. A UN official said the war-torn country is in a difficult situation right now, and the situation is extremely alarming. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has appealed for urgent funding. A spokesman for the office, Jens Lierk, said aid workers report having to turn people away because they do not have enough medical oxygen. He said the UN estimates that it will seek $2 billion for Yemen to maintain aid programs through the year end. Yemeni authorities have so far reported 184 coronavirus infections, including 30 deaths to the WHO. The World Wildlife Fund says deforestation rose by 150% this March compared to the 2017 and 19 average for the same month. In a study, the WWF analyzed satellite data of 18 countries compiled by the University of Maryland. In a statement, the German arm of WWF said around 6,500 square kilometers of rainforest were felled in March alone. It said there's ample evidence to suggest the boom in rainforest deforestation is being fueled by the COVID-19 pandemic. With strict lockdowns in place in many countries, authorities haven't been able to patrol nature preserves and indigenous territories as often. This is a situation that criminal organizations and illegal loggers have been using to their advantage. The study said the forests were most heavily hit by deforestation in Indonesia, with more than 1,300 square kilometers lost. A 37-year-old Thai street artist is splashing walls across Bangkok with murals depicting the fight against the coronavirus. Details in this report.
As the world recuperates from the novel coronavirus pandemic, an artist in Thailand has come up with a unique way of keeping the virus at bay. He paints murals on the walls of Bangkok. Going by the pseudonym Mubon, which means restless hands in Thai, the 37-year-old signature designs feature what he refers to as winged creatures. They resemble birds dressed as health workers fighting against an ominous-looking green coronavirus.
I want to play my part in reminding people about the situation and recording the history in which we all helped each other by staying home to stop the spread of the virus.
Newborn said he preferred the canvas of the streets rather than a formal art gallery to exhibit his work so that it remains more accessible to the public.
On the basis of our society, there is a huge gap between art and the ordinary people. Thais are not into art. They don't really understand it. Therefore, I put artwork on the streets at places where people sitting in cars will be able to see it driving by, where they don't have to go to an art exhibition or a gallery to see the art.
Newborn prefers painting during the hours of night. Most of his spray paint murals take around 2 hours to finish. Although the artist says he is not popular in Thailand, his artwork has been displayed abroad in countries like Japan, the US, Germany, and most recently Palestine.
Global benchmark Brent crude price has touched its highest level since March, supported by lower U.S. crude inventories. The oil price rebound also follows OPEC-led output cuts and recovering demand as governments ease COVID-19 restrictions. Brent crude settled at over $36 per barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude closed at about $34 a barrel. On Thursday, U.S. Energy Information Administration said crude inventories fell by 5 million barrels last week. It said stocks at oil storage hub at Cushing, Oklahoma, dropped by over 5.5 million barrels. Fuel demand has gradually ticked upward in recent weeks as governments worldwide begin to ease restrictions. European stock markets are trading lower as ties between the US and China have come under further strain, potentially threatening the Phase 1 trade deal. Investors are monitoring the developments on the issues between the two largest economic powerhouses. London's FTSE 100 is trading over 1% higher. Frankfurt's DAX has lost over 0.5%, while CAC 40 in Paris is trading fractionally higher. In Asia, Hong Kong's Hang Seng led the losses, closing over 5.5% lower as sentiments dips over Beijing's new security laws. Shanghai Composite lost nearly 2%, while Seoul's Kospi closed nearly 1.5%. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil price has lost nearly 5%. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.